3 seconds. That was all it took for Marjorie Pike to decide that Dorian Blackwood didn't belong in the Regulus Airways first-class lounge. His bespoke charcoal suit, polished demeanor, and subtle authority meant nothing to her. All she saw was the color of his skin. Security, she whispered, with a narrowed gaze that had dismissed 1,000 others just like him. What she didn't see, couldn't possibly comprehend, was the legacy that Dorian had built. A cell-made magnate, founder of Blackwood Intelligence Systems, a silent force behind the infrastructure of American transportation, defense, and data. The man she tried to dismiss held influence so vast, her world simply didn't have the metrics to measure it. As security approached and ushered him out, most passengers looked away, convenient apathy draped in politeness. All except one. A young intern named Trevor Jenkins, who stared, wide-eyed and horrified, recognizing instantly the tech legend they were humiliating. Dorian didn't flinch, didn't raise his voice, didn't demand acknowledgement. He simply made a quiet call. Raven Protocol. Begin observation. And just like that, Regulus Airways had unknowingly declared war on a man who had built his empire for precisely this moment, for the day prejudice would come dressed as policy. The early morning sun hadn't yet burned away the dew when a blacked-out Tesla Model X glided to a stop outside Washington National Airport. Dorian Blackwood, 42, stepped out with the effortless calm of someone who controlled more than most knew existed. He adjusted the cuffs of his Tom Ford jacket and nodded to his driver. "Enjoy the rest of the day, Lewis. I won't need a pickup." Inside, the energy shifted. It always did. The unspoken discomfort, the subtle tension. Travelers glanced at him sideways. A man near the TSA lane stiffened unconsciously. A woman held her purse a bit closer. Dorian noted everything. He always did. He approached the first-class counter. The younger clerk smiled with professionalism. The older one, Marjorie, froze, scanning him like he had trespassed. Her badge glittered under the lights, but her posture reeked of something less noble. "Morning," Dorian offered smoothly, sliding over his ID and platinum frequent flyer card. Regulus Airways. San Francisco. 11:30 flight. Marjorie's smile was taut. "Business or pleasure, Mr. Blackwood?" "Business," he replied evenly, watching her fingers stab at the keyboard. Her glance shifted from his ID to his face, then over to her colleague. "You recognize the name," she whispered, too loud to be subtle. "That's that tech guy, right? Probably just lucked into some IPO windfall." Dorian had heard it all before. The assumption. The erasure. The quiet theft of dignity masked by bureaucracy. With a forced politeness, she handed over his boarding pass. "You may proceed to the first-class lounge," she said. "Boarding starts at 10:45. At the lounge entrance, another clerk greeted him warmly, but before the interaction could proceed, Marjorie reappeared, breathless, assertive, interjecting. "I'll handle this," she said, brushing the young man aside. She inspected Dorian's boarding pass with absurd scrutiny. "Is there a problem?" Dorian asked quietly. "These are very expensive seats," she said, the implication clear. "We need to verify that passengers are where they're supposed to be." Dorian remained calm, but the steel in his voice began to show. "I assure you my documentation is valid." A man nearby scoffed. "Maybe he's lost. Coach is that way." Marjorie's eyes gleamed. "Security, please." Minutes later, Victor Lane, the airport's security supervisor, arrived. He reviewed Dorian's documents and confirmed everything was in order. "Still," Marjorie pressed, "I think you should be removed, just to be safe." Victor hesitated, then turned to Dorian. "Sir, would you mind stepping aside while we sort this?" "Of course," Dorian replied, his voice controlled. As he walked, he noticed Trevor, the intern, furiously typing something on his phone. Dorian gave a small nod, then placed a call once out of earshot. "This is Blackwood. Protocol Raven. Full spectrum observation. Begin." Inside Regulus HQ, panic would soon begin to spread. Trevor's text had reached another node, his friend Maya Daniels in IT. Within moments, the staff were whispering. Dorian Blackwood had been escorted from the lounge. The Dorian Blackwood, architect of systems that powered the FAA, the Pentagon, half the air traffic control across the globe. At the same time, Dorian's mind flashed back to a rainy day outside a foster home, aged 8, notebook in hand, sketching the first rudiments of algorithmic prediction, his way of coping with grief, abandonment, loss. He'd been let down by the system before. Not this time. By 14, he was developing software that beat hedge funds at pattern recognition. At 17, he built an app that predicted food shortages using weather patterns. MIT called. Scholarships followed. So did betrayal. Winston Partners, a venture firm led by Bradley Winston, stole his first creation under the guise of mentorship. It had been the first lesson in real power. Back at the airport, Victor Lane escorted Dorian to a holding room. "Sir," he said quietly, "I know who you are. This shouldn't be happening." "I understand," Dorian said. "But it is. And this time, there will be consequences." Online, the incident went viral within hours. #FlyingWhileBlack trended worldwide. Cell phone footage of Marjorie's aggressive tone flooded TikTok and Instagram. Trevor's discreet video showing Dorian being led away triggered outrage across industries. Meanwhile, inside a high-rise overlooking D.C., Leah Obeisai, former CIA operations director and now head of Blackwood Global Security, received the activation call. "Protocol Raven is live," Dorian had said. "Understood," she answered, scanning data on Regulus Airways offshore accounts, concealed lawsuits, political lobbying links, safety violations, all buried. Their time was up. At Regulus headquarters, CEO Thomas Whitmore sipped scotch and smirked. Just another entitled passenger throwing a fit. Blame the gate agent, toss a statement about diversity online, and move on. "Sir," his communications director said, that passenger was Dorian Blackwood. The smile disappeared. Regulus systems began failing within 48 hours. Payment glitches, downgraded tickets, cancellations, and then the leak. Internal memos, racial profiling training materials, HR complaints buried under NDAs. Then came the expose, offshore laundering, regulatory fraud. The FBI took notice. Charles's board turned cold. His COO, Helen Ward, privately met with Leah. "This has gone on too long," she said. "I want to help fix this." "You will," Leah replied. "When this crumbles, you'll lead the rebuild." In the days that followed, Jamal went public. So did Victor. So did Erica, the lounge attendant who stood up to Marjorie. Regulus stock plummeted 48% in a week. Senators distanced themselves. Charles was suspended. Blackwood Dynamics offered to acquire the airline at a bargain. "I'm not here to destroy," Dorian told the Regulus board. "I'm here to rebuild. Fairly. For everyone." With public support, employee testimony, and data trails deep enough to sink a fleet, Regulus capitulated. Dorian's terms were clear. Keep the jobs. End the culture of silence. Start again, with transparency, inclusion, integrity. 3 months later, Cole Air was born. At its launch ceremony, held at the same airport lounge where it all began, Dorian stood on stage, looking into the cameras with quiet resolve. "This isn't about revenge," he said. "It's about renewal. About making sure dignity isn't a luxury seat, it's the standard." As the first plane took off under the Cole Air banner, passengers felt something shift, not just in the air, but in history. And in the quiet, as the engines hummed and the horizon stretched out, Dorian Blackwood finally allowed himself to breathe.